Okay, guys. Can I ask you for the first Suede album? What was the songwriting process for this album? Did you send each other demos? Did you write together? Did you write separately? How did it work at this stage?
How are we going to do this? Like, both give... Well, that's what you say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we had quite a sort of set structural way of doing it. Bernard would write stuff on his own. We didn't really do demos in those days, did we? You brought it into the rehearsal room, and then you'd play your part, and then Matt and Simon would play along after you'd written it, and then I'd sort of warble. We did a lot. I personally did a lot of writing in rehearsal room in those days. It wasn't sort of sitting with 4 tracks. It was a different sort of thing.
Yeah, we didn't have. Yeah, I mean, you'd record it, and we'd record it in the rehearsal room, like on a cassette machine or whatever. Yeah. And you'd take that home, wouldn't you?
Exactly. Yeah. I'd sort of come up with a line, you know, like a vocal line and just phonetics, and then I'd sort of take it home and sort of like turn it into a lyric and sort of work on it like that. That's how I'd do it. You know, but a lot of those early songs would, you know, I remember something like My Insatiable one. I remember that specifically because we had a rehearsal booked, a band rehearsal, and both Simon and Matt were ill or something, and they couldn't make the rehearsal.
Yeah.
It was just me and Bernard in this rehearsal room in Hackney, and I don't know if you'd written it before. We just said, let's write something, and you just wrote the riff, didn't you?
Yeah, I had like the riff or something, you know, half of it, but yeah, it wasn't completed.
And we just wrote the song like that, just me and him sort of in the rehearsal room, kind of, let's, you know, and then I remember you'd sort of like, when that minor chord just before the chorus came in, that was sort of something that you kind of like, you just sort of changed on this, you know,
I was
actually in the rehearsal room.
Trying to be Sinatra.
Exactly.
Putting in a minor chord. Whoa, it's a major to minor. Whoa, we haven't even made the first album yet, and we're already doing that.
But we were really sort of getting into the whole songwriting thing, you know, it was. You know, it's even by that stage, and that was before we had any records out, we were kind of like really enjoying what you could do with songs. You know, we weren't just sort of like banging it out in a rehearsal room like we're a punk band or something like that. It was sort of like we were trying to craft it a little bit more cleverly, even at that stage.
So you did effectively create demos, even if you didn't record them. You did create demos of the songs in the rehearsal rooms.
Kind of, yeah, but they were sort of rehearsal room recordings, weren't they? I don't. When did you get a 4-track? I remember you did.
Not until not until we were making the first record.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember there was a demo, a really early demo of the Drowners, wasn't there? Because I remember.
Yeah, but it was done on your one.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because I remember it was like a drum machine, and because I remember coming around to your place in Leighton, and you played me like drum machine and guitar demo of that. That was a really early thing. But that was the first one we did.
Like, I mean, from the very start, I mean, there's like a whole phase before the first album, before making the first album, when we were sort of a different band, really, and not very good, within reason, you know. But there was a whole phase of going through there where, the back of my mind, I wanted it to be about songwriting. This is what I wanted to do before I met Brett, before, you know, there was any band involved. And it took about 1.5 years after actually meeting them for that to evolve. So during that earlier period, it was more, there was several different ways we worked and stuff, but it wasn't till Simon was in the band and we were getting a bit more serious about it, that it started to be more, either I'd bring in songs, you know, total musical pieces, and bring it into the room and in the rehearsal room and have an vague idea of what the drummers should do, or who, you know, what we should be doing, or what kind of song it was, and we'd jam it out and Brett would take it home. Or there was quite a few where, yeah, like you say, either we'd write it together. I remember doing a couple, you know, I remember doing Pantomime Horse at my house as well, in Leighton.
Pantomime Horse is an interesting one, 'cause I remember when you first brought it into the rehearsal room, it had a different time signature.
Right.
And we changed it into that time signature. I think it was like, I don't know, it was the same chords and it had a different, it was almost like a 4/4 or something like that, and then we sort of said, oh, why don't we try it like this or something like that. But they didn't normally change that much. It was normally Bernard would bring in a piece of music and it would stay, you know, the same time signature and the same kind of, pretty much the same chord sequence and everything. In the rehearsal room, we just sort of like add parts to it.
But then they'd evolve, you know, in rehearsal, and I wouldn't really hear the lyrics till much later on because I couldn't hear
Till
it.
it was in the shop.
Because I couldn't, basically, till the reviews came out.
So he'd be sitting there with the album. That's what he's saying.
It's called what? No, that's the truth. Mainly because I was so into what I was doing,
Yes.
and into the melodic side of what I was doing as well. But also because I couldn't hear it, and I couldn't hear it in rehearsal, and I couldn't hear it at the gigs.
Yes.
Couldn't hear anything, and I just always had the feeling that if he's happy, I'm happy. You know, it was like that. If it's working, it's working, and just go with it. You know, because not everything got to that level as well. You'd have tunes he'd bring in, and they wouldn't work, or he would just be, you know, perhaps wouldn't get it, or wasn't in, or you know, didn't get it for one reason or another. So there was always like a bit of a trial and error. You know, and there's quite, you know, like Animal Nitrate took ages. I remember.
Yeah.
Going back and forward, and I remember I was playing it, the three, me, Matt, and Simon. It got to the point where it was quite fully formed with us three, and we were always playing it, and you weren't getting it for or you know what?
Yeah.
You weren't.
I just couldn't find the right
something.
melody for it. That was the thing, you know. And I was kind of trying, and suddenly it kind of clicks. The penny drops, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is it. Yeah, I know how to do this now.
But that went as far as recording it for the record, and I had no idea what the vocal was going to be. I don't even know if you had one when we started recording that.
No, I don't think you did.
I don't, but everyone, I think we played it to our manager at the time as an instrumental as well, and he was like, well, you know, it sounds like an obvious kind of song you should have if somebody sang on it.
Well, that kind of leads to my next question. How then, out of the songs you'd have made by this process, how did you decide which ones to record?
The best ones.
I think with your first record, you do everything you've got. You know, and at that time we were only, because we'd been through this first phase of having songs and chucking them out, and we'd purged all the kind of older songs we had. The only songs we were playing live, you know, and at the time you're only playing sets of like 6 or 7 songs at that time because you're only playing to 10 people, and you know, and we were insistent on playing just the best songs, you know, and each time we had a song and got to that stage, we'd worked quite hard to make sure it was refined. You know, before it even got to the point where we decided, right, we can play it live. So I think once you're at that point and you've got like 6, 7, 8 songs in your live set, those are going to be the ones that are going to work for the record.
I think because we were, you know, because we were very much a live band at that point, because new bands always are. You don't sort of, you know, you're not kind of so au fait with the sort of environment of the studio. Because of that, we didn't quite understand that the songs that work the best live aren't necessarily the best songs. And so because of that, there was sort of like things on the first album like Animal Lover and Moving and stuff like that, which are great live songs, but you know, compared to something like To the Birds and My Insatiable One and things like that, you know, they weren't as good songs. And it's just like,
I was going to ask what divided the songs between album and B-sides. Because
I mean, there was another factor there in those days that we really wanted to be releasing amazing singles with amazing B-sides, which was very much a kind of like, you know, Smith's sort of like influence. You know, that they always did that, and you know, I think we always found that really inspiring. That they never kind of like, you know, released anything that was just a load of old rubbish, and we kind of wanted to continue that tradition. And so we did, I suppose, you know, in today's standards, throw lots of stuff away on the B-sides. But I think that's kind of what made, you know, the band quite special to people.
I think it built up the mystique.
Yeah, and it, you know, it's...
It's like a long-term investment, because at the time when you know, you got to remember when you're making your first single, it's quite exciting, but actually nobody in the world knows about you really, apart from a handful of people. And when you feel like you're chucking really great songs that should be on an album onto the B-sides, you feel like there's a bit of danger involved, because basically you're saying to yourself, you've got to then write songs as good as that again, because we didn't have enough songs.
Puts the pressure on, doesn't it? Yeah.
You know, when we were making the Drowners, we didn't have She's Not Dead and The Next Life, Breakdown, you know, and those were all written because we had to write something good for the record, because we'd already given away to...
And So Young as well, didn't have
Yeah, So Young, they, you know... again, Metal Mickey, when we did that, we were just making the album by then. No, we hadn't started making the album, did we?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because I wondered if, in fact, you recorded all the B-sides at the same time as the album.
For the 2 singles were done as singles, so they were done in like...
We went to
yeah.
Protocol and did them as single sessions, and we knew pretty much we had the songs for the B-sides, but when it came to Animal Nitrate was recorded for the album sessions, so the B-sides on that were outtakes of the albums, which is Painted People and The Big Time. I can't remember how The Big Time came about.
That was in the that was at the time of being in the studio, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
it
like the second session.
And again, I don't know why we put that as a B-side rather than on the album, because it's one of my favourite Suede songs, but it's one of those kind of, you know, charming mistakes that you end up slightly regretting.
Yes.
I think ironically though, because the way things work now, it doesn't matter, because you can get, like there was probably a few years then when you probably couldn't have got those songs, because unless you could search down the vinyl original CDs or whatever, but now you can get them track by track, so it's actually paid off in a way, I think, because it all becomes part of the one, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, who chose Master Rock Studios? Was that Saul Galpin, or did you...
That would have been Ed.
It would have been Ed. And how did you come by Ed?
It's through Saul. Saul worked with him at Ireland or somewhere like that, I think. They both worked together years ago. And
Ed was working at Island Studio. It was a studio, the Fallout Shelter, underneath Island Records. And I think he was working there, and Saul was working as an A&R man, or something like that, yeah.
And what was Ed's CV? Was there any...
We didn't get one. I don't remember getting one, that's for sure.
He'd done a lot of sort of shoegazing stuff,
Well,
hadn't he?
he was doing at the time.
He'd done Spiritualised
and Boo Radley's.
And Primitives and things like that. And it was lots of that kind of like very early 90s sort of indie stuff. But it was more, you know, we met Ed and we really liked him, and we really, you know, he liked and grew up with a lot of records that we really loved, you know, lots of sort of 70s stuff. I mean, you know, that kind of reference point is kind of slightly overused with Suede, but, you know, it was an early sort of like thing that we had in common with Ed, and we sort of like, we liked where he was coming from, and he obviously recognised that in the music we were making, and thought he could bring something interesting out of that. So it wasn't so much, you know, us attaching ourselves to his CV, it was more kind of like where we were going to go with it. It was important, I think.
I remember him coming into rehearsal to see us, and I don't know if that was the first time I met him, and he had the attitude that it was going to be easy, you know, just get on with it. It wasn't, whereas I was incredibly fraught about the whole thing. It was like, you know, preparing for my own funeral. Do you know what I mean? Like, so concerned about this epochal event of making a record, and it was like, well, we're going to go in the studio and do it, and I remember muttering about, you know, wanting the drums to sound like a T-Rex or something like T-Rex or something like that, and he was like, yeah, whatever, you know. And